Okay, welcome back. We're finished with loops for a while. So now on page 230, we start talking about doing file input output, file I/O. Okay, so before we start, file I/O basically has three parts to it. And you have to remember all three parts, otherwise something's not going to work. And that is you have to open the file, you have to read or write the contents, and then you have to close the file. Don't ever forget that last piece. It's so easy to open a file, do something, and just walk off and leave it, so to speak. And that's not good form. So don't ever forget step number 3. Okay, so these files can be text files or they can be binary files, but in this chapter we're only going to be talking about text files, which is okay by me. All right, so let's start talking about a new thing called a print writer. Okay, so the print writer is a cool way to create a file and write to it. Okay, so I'm going to go here and looks like my indentation is a bit weird. How'd that happen? I tell you what, let's just do the Control A, Alt Shift F. There you go. Cool. Somehow my indentation got off. Probably because of the comments in there. But who cares? All right, now we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to say print writer. Let's just call it. Sometimes I use abbreviations when I'm doing file I/O, and it's just a habit of mine. You don't have to follow this, but I say PW, just print writer. It's probably not very descriptive for most people. Is equal to new print writer. And then we're going to give it the name of a file. My data.txt. Okay. And then just like when we use the scanner guy, it comes back and says, "Hey, what do you want me to do here?" So I'm going to do a I'm going to add an import to print writer. Okay, cool. Why do I have a... okay, cool. This is something that's a little weird. And it's kind of hard to explain it all at once because the book ignores this issue and moves on until later on they go, oh yeah, by the way. It says that the print writer could, what's called, throw an exception. Now, to tell you the truth, we're not going to get to exceptions until we get to chapter 11. So we got a long way to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and fake this out, kind of. I'm going to go here, and one of the options is going to be add a throws clause. So that's what I'm going to do. Boink. Okay, now what that did is way up at the top, it added this part right here. Throws file not found exception. And I'm not going to explain what that means right now, other than the fact that that's how you solve the problem when it comes up and asks you for that. We definitely are going to get back to this a little bit later. But for now, okay. So now I've created me a print writer. And so it's pretty straightforward stuff. Now, you remember that, classes, the names show up twice. Once as a type and once as a constructor. Remember all that? Cool. So I'm just going to go here and say pw dot, and then we're just going to use the same old stuff that we've been using. Right? Print ln, right? And I'm going to say, my name is Bob. And let's do another one, another line. Pw print ln, and my age is 42. Okay, cool. So I've written 2 lines to this thing. So what was that third thing you were supposed to remember how to do? I need to have a close in here. PW close. All right, I opened the file on line 109. 109. I wrote to it in 110, 111, and then I closed it. So let's run this. See what it does. So I'm going to do this. Students, hey, I'm just going to punch in a 0. And then I'm going to punch in a -1. Cool. Enter my age, 42. And then, okay, so some file got created somewhere. Well, let me ask you, where the heck is that file? Where did it put it? I mean, it's called mydata.txt. Where is it? It's going to be in the NetBeans project folder. So in my case, NetBeans project chapter 4, and there it is. So I'm just going to double click on it to verify it. Yeah, okay, cool. That makes sense. Hey, I'm going to go in here and say, this is cool. Just adding a third line of text onto that guy. Okay. So let's run this one more time. And 0 students. None. 42. Okay, let's go back to that guy and see what it's got. Well, wait a minute. It wiped out the contents of my file and then wrote over it. I used to have 3 lines of text. Now it only has 2. What's going on here? Well, the way it works is that the print writer is going to open the file if it exists and clean out all the data and then do its thing. Or if it does not exist, it will create the file. So it will create a new one, but if there's an existing one, it's going to whack it. All the contents of the file are going to be gone, and then it starts over again. Okay. So how do you fix that? How do you fix the fact that I'll tell you what, let's do one more thing. I'm going to deliberately cause an error, okay? I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in a drive letter that doesn't exist, like drive letter Q. By the way, backslashes are, remember backslash is an escape sequence, so if I want a backslash, I have to have it twice, okay? So let's see what happens, because there is no drive Q. Let's just see what happens here. Okay, number of students is 0, and a -1, and my age is 42, and bam! I got all this stuff about file not found. I got a file not found exception. So up here, I got this thing that says file not found exception. Okay? So what did that do for me? Well, to tell you the truth, it didn't do anything at all until we get to chapter 11. So just because this thing says that it all this does on line 22, all this does is say, yes, I'm aware that this might cause a problem. That's it. It does not solve the problem in any way, and we ain't ready to do that until we get to chapter 11. I just wanted to show you that that's a little funky. Okay. There could be other types of errors. It could be like ran out of disk space, or permission denied, or the file is read-only. I mean, there's lots and lots of different kind of errors, not just not found. So I know of another exception that could occur. It's called the IO exception, which means I'm trying to write to it, but I can't. So I'm just going to go up to here and put a comma and say IO exception, adding an extra exception on there. And it says, hey man, I can't find that symbol, so I'm going to throw this guy in. Okay, so now I've got some more imports. I got the file not found guy, I've got the IO exception guy, I got the print writer guy. Cool. All right. So far, so good. All right. So how do I append to the data rather than whacking it? Well, I can't do that with print writer alone. I have to have another component. I have to open the file in a different way. Okay, now this is a little confusing, so just bear with me. And I need to create something called a file writer. I know it sounds like they're the same thing, right? A file writer and a print writer, they sound practically identical. So I'm just going to do file writer FW is equal to new file writer. And I'm going to open the exact same file over again. Okay. Now, file writer will allow you to have a parameter here that says whether or not something, well, I'll tell you what, I need to solve this problem first. So once again, I'm going to have to do another import. Okay. Now, when I get to here and hit the comma, one of the options is, oh, come on. I thought for sure it was going to come up and tell me. Okay, fine. I type in the word true, which means yes, I want to append to the data. So that's how you tell it how to open something without actually wiping this thing out. Now, I'm not actually going to use the file writer to do any of the printing. I'm going to turn right around and use the print writer a second time. So this is weird. So when you want to append, you have to do two things. You have to have the file writer and the print writer. All right, so here's how this works. This is a little weird. So I say, I'm going to do another print writer. So I'll do PW is equal to new print writer. And this time I'm just going to tell it that the print writer I'm going to use is actually the file writer. Okay, this is kind of weird. And then I'm going to grab these guys and put them in here. Cool. All right, so now we're going to try it one more time. The first one is going to whack the data, add 2 lines. The second one is going to open it a second time and add 2 more lines. Let's see if it worked. I probably should have fixed this thing so I don't have to answer all these dang prompts while I'm trying to demo something else. Okay, so it succeeded. Let's go see. Let's go look at my data. And ta-da! It did not whack the contents. It appended to it. Now you might think, well, why don't I just use file writer for everything? Why do I need this print writer guy? Well, a file writer is not very efficient. What happens is whenever you say, if I was to use just the file writer, okay? When you did this one line, it would write that one line to the file. And then you want that one, and it'll write it again to the file. The print writer is going to cache all this up. So instead of having hundreds of disk activities where write this tiny piece, and write this tiny piece, and write this tiny piece, it caches it all up and waits to the end and writes all the pieces at one time. So the print writer uses a cache and therefore is significantly more efficient, and more efficient from it's faster and more efficient and less wear and tear on your machine and blah 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 blah. It's a dang good idea to use print writer because it is the right way to do it. The file writer is a primitive thing, extraordinarily primitive, and we only use it so we can get to this thing where I append. That's about it. Okay. So I mentioned about how you specify the location. So I could do something different. Let's just pretend. I could say something like, C:/ users / image, blah, 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 right? Just keep on going like this. Whoa, I forgot one of the things. Okay, that's a little clumsy, I'll admit. There is a way that you can do this using /, but I'm not recommending you do that just because it's not portable. And I try to teach you only those things that you're going to be able to use in other languages. I don't want to have something that's kind of bizarre that only works in Java. Okay, kind of makes sense? Okay, so now it's time to read the data from a file. All right, that's pretty straightforward, I would think. And I'm going to be using the scanner class. Woohoo! We like scanner. Except instead of having the standard in, I'm going to be getting it from a thing called a file. Okay, so first thing I kind of sort of need is a file class. So I'm going to say file, and I'm just going to call it F. I told you guys to pick variable names that make sense, and then I turn right around and use variable names that don't make any sense, and I do apologize. That's just the way when it comes to file I/O, I've always done it that way. I'm not suggesting that you necessarily do it that way. File F is equal to new file, and then put in whatever it is, like my data.txt. And of course, once again, I'm going to get one of those little doodads saying something is up. And so I'm going to go ahead and take that and say add the imports. Okay, now we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, and I'll show you a trick on how you can shorten some of this stuff up in just a few.